afternoon, everybody. I'm Susanna Calvert. I'm the founder and convener for Mission and Vision for the Foundation for Family and Community Healing. Our mission is to help everyone learn to create healthy and rewarding relationships with ourselves, each other, Earth, and the loving force that unites us. Today, I'm so happy to present to you our Engaging Spirituality discussion series. This series was started by Tim Ford, a convener for engaging spirituality in the foundation. And I'm so delighted about our guest panelist, discussion person. I don't know what the word is, discussioner, Christy Gray. Before we introduce Christy, I'll just turn it over to Tim for a moment so he can say a few more words about this series.
Sure. Thanks, Susanna. And I'm really excited to see so many people here. And it's already a wonderful feel of community. And I'm deeply grateful that we all have the time to do this. Part of this series developed out of Susanna and I just having good conversations about spirituality and about how this relates to the mission of FFCH, but also as a celebration of the community that we have and what we've been gathering here. We found that our community not only was deeply spiritual, but came from a broad, diverse set of traditions and backgrounds. And as we started to engage that and talk about what that diversity does for our community, we started to realize there was a lot of wisdom in the community itself, but also in the people that had inspired us. And so we decided to come up with this series to invite in some of those wisdom keepers to come talk to us a little bit about not just their own spirituality, but how we engage spirituality in the modern world and in our relationships and in our relationship with the earth. And so we've invited in a few folks already. Christy will be our third, and I'm very excited to be talking to Christy today.
Yes, and it's such a treat to have Christy. I've been tasked with the challenge of introducing Christy when she really defies description, as many of you already know and are nodding your heads. I met Christy as I was floundering around in Athens trying to figure out what it meant to be spiritual once I committed to doing this thing I had no understanding of. And I ran across her through introduction through our mutual friend Connie Masenti. And I met Christy at an event and through her newsletter, and realized that she was the spiritual teacher I had been seeking. And so even though I've moved back to Richmond, I've become one of her apprentices to my great joy and benefit, and have had the honor of getting to know such an amazing and special person. When I asked Christy to define herself, she said crone. And I said, yes, of course. And much of our audience will think that was a pejorative word, but when we take out any type of negative connotations, it's a perfect description for Christy. I listed wise woman and intuitive and spiritual teacher, and I would say a treasure of the multiverse, and just a beautiful, wise, kind, and generous soul. So I think I better quit while I'm ahead, and just end it with huge levels of affection and gratitude and love for this very dear person in my life. So I'll turn it back over to Tim to get the discussion started. And just as a reminder, we'll have a three-way discussion for the next till about quarter till, which leaves us about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and then we'll open it up to those of you who are listening in for questions or comments or discussion. Tim?
Great. So we're going to try and not make this so much us peppering you with questions, Christy, but more just trying to invite it into a level of dialogue. And I know when Susanna and I do this, we frequently are sort of checking out what our common terms and common models that we can talk to each other are. So one of the first things I'd like to sort of throw out there for you is, one of the ones Susanna and I like to play with is Joseph Campbell's idea of the hero and the hero's journey. And so in your journey, was there a moment of like a hero's call that you knew that you were going to be a spiritual teacher, a spiritual person? Or was it more like a sort of lifelong bubbling?
First of all, Susanna, thank you for that introduction. I think, gosh, I remember thinking one time, who is my hero?
Uh-huh.
And I remember one time thinking, who is my hero? And I realized it was me.
Oh,
That
wow.
I, and that I'm so extraordinarily blessed. And I know that I always get all these people know I cry. My journey is been one of since I was a child. I've always only had one foot in this world and
Uh-huh.
three paws out of it. And eventually I realized that I knew that. But one thing I must say about my life is I've always been loved, extremely loved. And so I think that that's been a great blessing. It's sort of the oil that's greased on the machinery. And so I think that it was always a destiny to become Christy, whatever that means. And
Mm.
it's not um, an egotistical Christy. It's more of a beloved to myself. And it took me a long time to get there, but I'm there now. And the other night, this is crazy. I'll tell this to y'all because I know all of you and feel I know you, Faith. Um, the other night, after I'd had that first COVID shot,
Mm.
I had this pressure in my chest. It was the other afternoon, and I thought, "Oh my God, what is that?" So I sat down in my chair, and I thought, "I may be dying. This may be a heart attack."
Wow.
And I thought I should call someone. And then I thought, "Nope, I'm just going to sit here, and I'm going to say thank you all the way out the door." So I began to think of all the beautiful things I've seen, all the people I've loved. Um, just grace, grace, grace. So I think that might have been. I didn't die, by the way. It's just, but I do think that I realized that I have really lived my life, and
Wow.
so that's a hero's journey to me.
So, Christy, I don't know if Susanna shared with you any of my background, but I'm a chaplain at the hospital, and I teach doc spirituality, and I teach chaplains. But my clinical background has almost all been death and dying work, and that idea of on your deathbed with that feeling of this may be it. One of the things that kept me doing that work so long was that at that moment, so many of the things that distract us from the spiritual should just fall away. And it's like a purification there of just what is the most important thing. And I love that your reaction to that wasn't, I need to solve this, or I need to fix this, but your reaction was, I need to express gratitude.
Yeah.
I love that. That's sort of, when you boil it all down, the last thing you want on your lips is thank you.
Oh gosh, I'd love to go out saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I have to say, I've seen some folks do it that way
Oh,
when that's what's left at the very last, and it's so powerful to watch that. It's a really incredible gift to the people around them, but also just if you think about like what's the perfect way to do that.
Well, and I think
I,
this is such a beautiful point of flexion. Did I just make up that word?
You're
where
not.
where um, like this, I could die right now, and
Mhm.
it would be okay. That will be acceptable. And then what does that open up for you? Because I feel like I had a death when my my late husband Christopher died.
Absolutely.
That my life died, and my old self died, and I could just do what spirit was guiding me to do, and accept my mission, and et cetera, et cetera. And when that acceptance comes, that there's something that can open up. So did something new open up to you, Christy, in that moment where you were like, I might die and that's okay, and that didn't happen? You didn't die, as you said. And did that open anything in you?
well, first of all, I was grateful I didn't die because my friend Barbara Odell, who is in charge of everything at this house, would have been furious at me because it's all a big mess right now. So I was like, "Phew, Barbara won't be mad." But I do think that it gave me permission. I realized how happy I am, and
Were you surprised by how happy you were?
oh no, I mean I'm so blessed. Honestly, look at these people. Every one of these
I see
people
that.
adore me, and I adore each of them. I'm blessed. If this were the only 10 people in the world, I'm blessed. So I felt like it was just like a stamp of approval for me
Mm-hmm.
to say, well done. And of course, there's always a bus factor. You know, you could go at any minute. But I really have not ever really been afraid of dying. Um, I had an experience where I died. You know, it was out of body experience where I was dying in 1988.
Ooh, please
And
tell us more about that.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to hear more about that.
Oh, okay. I was laying on a bed at the Grove, this old beautiful farmhouse I lived in. Most of you have been there. And gosh, I was dying. I woke up dying and I was above the bed. But I felt there was a knitting at the chakra, my crown chakra, as
Mm-hmm.
if I were moving through a cervix,
Uh-huh.
a tight birth. And then I reached for everything and it was gone immediately. And I felt like that and I tried to get it back, but I heard my name, and as soon as it slipped away, it began again. That a knitting, 3 times it happened, and then boom, I hit the bed again. And for a long time, I just couldn't do nothing but walk around the house going no, 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 because I'd felt that freedom, that expanse, that perfect, exquisite moment when there was nothing but me and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I really had a hard year after that. I fell into some deep depression. In fact, I got these questions from y'all, and I thought if I wrote a spiritual autobiography, I would start with that because that
Yeah.
was like rebirth.
Yeah.
And
And a really hard rebirth coming back, right? It sounds
yeah,
like it was difficult to return.
oh gosh. Well, then I realized that I feel like we come into this world to learn something
Mm-hmm.
important, and that we are here for that. And when
Mm-hmm.
it's time to go, we really do slide out quite carefully. In fact, when I was in the hospital one time, I was quite ill, and I asked Spirit, I said, "Am I dying?" And Spirit laughed and said, "Good grief, you're already dead. All of you are." And I went, "What?"
I love that. It's
And Spirit said, "You just don't know it yet, but when you realize it, you can come home." And
ah,
I thought that was another like segment of this experience of being in this life.
nice.
And after that, like after that moment of dying, and after that year of really being sad, I went to Britain, and I spent 10 days by myself there, and I found me. And I came back, and gosh, whew, I started doing shamanic journey and lodges and readings, and I mean, if somebody said, "Do you want to learn?"
You had not been doing any of that before this one?
No, I've been sort of tiptoeing,
Uh-huh.
but it was like full throttle after that.
It
I
sounds
mean,
like you
anybody
got
said
grabbed.
I'm sorry, what, Tim?
It sounds like you got grabbed.
I felt like it was like a walk-in experience. It's like something completed itself in me,
Uh-huh.
and I I um I remember walking on the porch that morning, and I had 5 cats who adored me, and every one of them hissed and tried to run away from me.
Oh, wow.
And I felt like something had shifted so deeply, but it was out of focus, and so it had to move into focus. And it took that, like from July, that's when it happened, the death, to November, when I came back from Britain. I felt like Britain is home to me. Um, Many of you have been there with me, and I um, I felt like I became focused and purposeful, and like a butterbean in a slingshot. When I got home, somebody let the butterbean go, and that was the beginning of this segment, the spiritual segment.
And go ahead, Susanna.
So if we're all here to learn something, and we're pretty much ready to go when we've learned it. Is there something remaining for you? I mean, I suppose if you can name it, then you've sort of learned it, but it doesn't mean you necessarily understand it or have perfected it. So do you, um, is what you need to learn on your awareness, like what's left for you to learn? And what would you want everybody to know? Like what would be the deep wisdom or insight from your life that you would want everybody to know as
Well,
part
I
of
think
your
on my
learning?
tombstone, which I probably won't have one because I'll get my ashes spread all over the place, I would say this. On one side of the tombstone, I would have written, listen, period.
Nice.
Just listen.
Uh-huh.
And then the other side, I would say, whenever you're afraid, choose curiosity.
Nice.
I think those would be the two things I would say to people. And if, fear's a good thing for us, a great teacher. Curiosity expands that fear.
Mm-hmm.
And the listen part, I think so oftentimes when we pray, we just now lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep blah 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 blah, and probably spirit standing there saying, "They're doing it again. I cannot believe it every night." So I think that what I try to teach my apprentices and friends too, and they have taught me. Believe me, they have taught me this is to listen. And there's a lot of information available, but we don't allow ourselves the time to listen behind it. Like the way I learned it is in that book, Mutant Message Down Under. Marla Morgan was asked by the real people, they said, how do you pray? And she said, well, I talk to God and ask God for things. And she said, how do you pray? And they said, we listen. And so just that day happened to be George Bush's birthday, and we're supposed to pray for him. He was not my favorite person. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do this anyway. So I went outside and I said to Spirit, I said, this is how I pray usually. I said, what's the deal with George Bush? Oh, what beauty I was taught about that soul we call George Bush. I love him now. I don't like his politics or some of his ideas, but I love his soul so much. And so I realized that I wasn't really listening a lot to what was going on around me. And so now I'm much more open to listening. I don't hear a lot, but what I hear is profound and expanding. So I think that's what I would say to people is listen. It's right there. You
And
just have to.
and just tying back to this thing about dying and the fear, I wonder if part of that opportunity, and Tim and I've talked about this multiple times, the opportunity of facing loss and death
Mm-hmm.
is,
Yeah.
when you get into an acceptance, then that fear goes away, and then you can be curious and listen more.
Uh-huh.
I think so, yeah. And I think also too is that when we do die, like I'll be skipping rope on the other side, hanging out with my dogs and kitties that have gone over, and I'll probably be walking along a beach in Scotland somewhere. You all will be crying,
Mm-hmm.
which is said to be funny. You'll also be going through my stuff because all of you are in my will. But also, I think the mourning of death is for the living. Ram Dass says death is absolutely safe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, somebody else said, I think it was Iris DeMint wrote that song about, it's just the poor old slobs left behind that are grieving. We're left with an empty shell. But
Mm-hmm.
the person who's crossed over, they're great. They're fine. So I think I see it like that. I am sorry when people die, and I don't ever think we die before our time. I think we die when we've learned everything we're supposed to learn, and we just slip through, and nothing can keep us from that.
When I'm thinking of the wisdom of the one that the Spirit taught you that one time when you asked, it's not just this death that happens at the end of this journey of life with this one body, but that we're participating in that same river all the time, and we are we are in the midst of death just as we're in the midst of life all the time. That it's already happened. And I find that one really challenging. And I like that one. I had a poster similar to that on my wall for many years. And
It's paradox.
What's that?
It's a paradox.
It is.
Well, can you both explain a little bit more about like we're already dying? And
So I'll
by the way, I think I'm going to live a long time if we die when we learned everything we're supposed to know. So go ahead.
I don't know that I can do it justice, and I'll let Christy do it better. But the poster I had on my wall forever was from a Buddhist master, and it was a description about impermanence. And they were talking about there was a master lecturing on impermanence, and that all things, no two things that come together won't fall apart again. Everything falls apart. And the one of the persons in the crowd actually challenged him, and he said, if you're so into impermanence, then why do you have such a nice crystal drinking glass there? And the master said, well, somebody gave me this glass and it means a lot to me. It has a lot of sentimental value. I love it. It holds the water so nicely. It's so pretty. When I touch it, it rings so pretty. But I know that one day my elbow or the wind is going to knock this thing over and it's going to break. And the tagline of the whole poster was, I know this cup is already broken, and so I enjoy it incredibly. And I think about that as we started, and you even said it, Christy, on your deathbed that one time, of that deep, deep sense of gratitude. And to me, that ties in with what you said about curiosity too, which is if we can hold ourselves open at that moment, then what comes up is, I'm just really grateful that we have this time right now to have this conversation, because I recognize not just that we're all going to die, but that this conversation will end. There's no way we can have this time forever. We're not going to be a gathering of what are we looking at here? 18 people. We're not going to be able to do this forever. But we have it right now, which is really wonderful. And part of the wonderfulness of this right now is that we can't do it forever. And it's the same with the life. This cup will break. And so we enjoy it the most we can when we recognize that, when we're not afraid of that.
That's great. I get that. I think that's really a great way to put it, because I've never really quite understood what it meant. But I don't really ask Spirit a lot of questions. I just go, what? Okay. And then I roll it around for a while. But it sounds like that impermanence is I love that about the glass.
Yeah. Like I said, that was my guide star for a long time in doing the work that I was doing, of just recognizing that death is part of this. But that I like what you said about the curiosity, because I think that flavor goes with the gratitude. If I can walk right into the fear of dying, or the fear of loss, or even the sadness of loss, like we were just talking about, if I can walk into that and not try and make it go away, but walk into it with sort of a curious heart of, what is this? This hurts. This is really painful. Or I'm really sad, or I'm really scared. And instead of saying, therefore I have to flee, walking into that going, what is this? And I have to say that I think I don't know how to do this well, but I think the two things you're really bringing so far that I heard that really resonate with me, I'm trying to put them together, and I think they go together, which is that deep sense of gratitude, of feeling blessed and loved, and that deep sense of, I'm safe enough to be curious, because I'm loved and I know that I'm blessed. And I heard you say it a couple times in your journey, that I'm whole, that I am who I'm supposed to be, and I'm focused now. That sense allows me to be more curious instead of afraid. Do you think am I going too far trying to shove those together?
No, I don't think so. I think that one thing is, like, any resistance to any of that you just said would be very human. One
That's
thing.
Actually one of my questions, Christy, is on resistance. I think that's right. Like, what gets in the way? Why don't we live like that all the time?
Well, we signed up to be humans. We make boo-boos all the time, big boo-boos. When I teach the tarot class, I always say, make mistakes.
Nice.
Hey, please promise me you'll make mistakes, because you're human. You came back to be wrong. You came back to run into walls. You came back to
I'm writing that one
trip up
down. You came
all
back to
kinds.
wrong.
And let's face it doesn't last very long. And I just see us as sort of like this representation of energy that feeds back into this autonomy that is learning about love. And I do think this too is that we weren't just always human. Most of us were probably rocks and trees, and Eleanor Hallington was a beautiful iris at one time. I'm sure of it. But I think that look, let me tell you this too, Tim. This you might like. I think I've told almost everybody that I know here this is that also when I was in the hospital, I had breast cancer and I had heart disease. And so I was in this machine that looks at your bones and stuff. I don't know the name of it.
MRI.
And I had these big, huge metal lightning bolts sticking out of my chest. And I mean, this is in vision. And I said to Spirit, well, actually, I had gone into that book, Sid Arthur, and I was with the ferryman on the river.
Yeah.
And I said, look at this. What's this? And the ferryman said, oh, gosh. I said, look at these things. I said, these are the diseases I have. And they were beautiful. I mean, these things are painted and glowing and beautiful and powerful. And the ferryman said, oh, no, those are not diseases. I said, no, they are. They're diseases. It's heart disease and cancer. And the ferryman said, no, you've got that wrong. The ferryman said, those are not diseases. Those are symptoms of the illness of humanity.
Nice.
And I said, what is the illness? And it said, beloved, you all don't love yourselves enough. Oh. And he started naming diseases. And I thought, oh my God, if I realize this is a symptom, I need to be allowing myself to love me more. And I do now love me more. And somebody said at the end of that year, 2016, they said, that was a terrible year for you. I said, oh my God, are you kidding? That's the best year of my life. Because I learned to love me. I learned it through challenge of almost leaving to say, gosh, I sure love me. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stick around. Look, somebody said to me one time, don't you want to live to be 150? I went, absolutely not. I don't want to, I don't want any of that stuff.
So Christy, this is bringing me back to a question I'd been formulating, and it was about that listen and about listening and being curious, and related to our purpose of learning. And so I suspect that the lesson that all of us must learn has to do with love. And do you think it has to do for each of us about loving ourselves? Is that the lesson we have to learn over and over again, and there's just variations on that, or is it broader than that?
Well,
or is it not about love? I guess.
I think we did come back to learn that, but we are human too. We came back to make boo-boos, to run into walls, and to judge and hate and be fearful. So those are part of the experience too. Think about this: a guy who's robbing a golden pantry and has his gun to the head of the owner, the guy behind the counter. What is he going to do with that money that he's getting from the robbery? He's probably going to maybe do drugs or buy something he thinks he needs, which is a deformed kind of love.
Right. A twisted.
So it really is love, but it's a deformed kind of love.
Yeah.
So I think that as humans, we come back sort of being poured constantly through a colander and looking at the pieces in the colander going, whoa, look at that. I don't think we squirt into this world staying in love with ourselves. I think when we do come in, we are in love with ourselves.
Yeah.
But I think we forget.
I had an African shaman professor at Naropa who, their tribe, let's see, was Burkina Faso, Dagara, the tribe he came from. They had a belief that babies were the freshest from the spirit world and still full of love and wisdom. And the elders were about to go back to the spirit world. And so they needed the most instruction. And so they believed very much in letting the elders play with the babies
Oh, God.
and putting the two together as much as possible.
Oh, wonderful. Those babies were teaching those elders.
And the elders were teaching the babies about what they needed to know about the world.
Oh,
Like,
wonderful.
welcome to the world. Here's what you need to know. And the babies are telling the elders, let me remind you, you're loved and that the spirit is there.
And you know, when you see two babies in a grocery store and they recognize each other, it's like, whoa, hey, I've been looking for you everywhere. You know, it's like they know something. Yeah, babies. Oh, that's great.
So
Christy, I'm still riffing off what you said about disease and symptom. And it sounded like, if I could twist it around a little, it sounded like what you said was all of these symptoms that we have of being human. And you use some physical ones of cancer and heart disease, but I think we could go into some other more psychological ones of fear and despair and other things, make us uneasy and create dis-ease. But if we look at the opposite of that as health is not the absence of those things, but health is loving ourselves. If I heard you right, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that loving oneself is a really important thing, but I think also it's very difficult for humans to do that. It's almost like we walk against a current.
Yeah.
Like if you're in a stream, you're walking against a current. We also have time here. On the other side, there probably isn't any time. Here, there is time with humans. I never saw a bird or a tree with a watch on. So I think it's a human condition, time is.
Definitely.
So I do think we're offered these challenges. I almost feel like there's a committee of spirits that follow us around and say to each other, like, you know, when I eat a big piece of carrot cake, they'll say, look, watch, come here, hey, come here, she's doing it again. She's eating the thing that makes her feel terrible. It's crazy. They must just think we're hilarious. But we also are so loved. And I think we probably don't know that till we get all the way on the other side. One time I took these people to a church down in Cornwall. It was Easter Sunday, and they wanted to go to a Methodist church, a lot of Methodists down in Cornwall. And these people were Methodists. So we went to church. There were about 20 gray-haired old ladies in there and me. And me want to be one of the gray hairs. And this lady came out on the stage with a microphone on, and there were only 20 of us. And she said, we are all sinners in the eyes of God. I was like, oh my God, this is not the place I should be sitting on Easter Sunday morning. So I just said to people, I'll meet you at the car. And I slipped out. And I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't realize I didn't believe that.
Really? Until then, you didn't know that that was something important to you?
I was raised Baptist, you know.
Oh, yeah. So you knew it well.
Slap upside the head.
Uh-huh.
Duh, I get it. And I thought, wow, my God doesn't see me as a sinner.
Uh-huh.
My God just sees me as human. A big old fat human eating cheesecake when it makes her feel terrible. Trying to get some grace out of something, you know.
You had, in that moment, you had a lot of integrity. You had the ability to say, this isn't me, and this isn't the God that I know. What does it do for you to see others who either think they need that or that's all they know?
Oh gosh, I learned this in a B&B in Mull, in Scotland, and this man was going on about gays in the church. He was Presbyterian. He was from New Zealand, and he was so angry about gays being in the church and this and that, blah blah blah, and on and on and on. And I just had finally had it with him, but I didn't say anything because I was with my people on tour. And then his wife came in and she started on women in the ministry. that was terrible and awful, blah, blah. And I said, I'm so sorry. I just have to interrupt you and say to you that I'm a woman and I'm a minister.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to say I'm gay, but I'm not. Right.
You wished you were at the moment, right?
I wish I was. And I said, oh man, I just let him have it. And I shook my finger nicely. I never lost my temper, but I did the old Southern get your finger out, point at him. And then I left the table. I pointed out to them that what would Jesus do, all that stuff. So I got up. I was going up the stairs, and the woman on the B&B came, and she said, "Are you really a minister?" I said, "Yes." She said, my brother is gay, and I've had these people up my butt all week. And I went, oh, my God. And she said, I can't stand them anymore. And I'm so grateful you called him on it. I said, well, I'm glad I was able to. So I'm going upstairs to my, to the bathroom to brush my teeth and get ready for the day. And I was like, I am somebody. Oh, I am so brave. And I got in the bathroom, and there's my old friend Spirit. I went, uh-oh, what? And it said, beloved, take this glass and pour the water from this glass into that little jug right there. And I did. I poured it into the jug. And then it said, I bring the jug with you. And at first it said, look how the water from the glass takes on the shape of the jug. Mm-hmm. I went, yes. And then it said, bring the jug with you. And so we went to this Scottish stream, wild place. And he said, and Spirit said, throw the water in there. And I did, and it was rushing like crazy. And I could feel it in my bones, in my blood. And so then we were back in the bathroom. And the Spirit said, I'm in charge of where your spirit container is. You could no more be in this little glass than the man downstairs could be in the wild Scottish stream. But it's not up to you, is it? It's up to me. I decide where people learn, not you. And so it said to me, with the greatest of love, I'm asking you to mind your own business.
And while I'm very grateful to you for what you did that day, and you obviously were serving Spirit in many ways, it wasn't the way you thought, and you're not allowed to hold on to it as a badge.
It said, stop judging. He said, Spirit said you were doing the same thing the man was doing.
Exactly right, yes.
And it's perfectly fine to point out for someone to be loving as long as you do so lovingly. Nice. So I went back downstairs trying to find that guy, and he was gone as if he were a spirit himself. There was nothing of him left.
Like he was
the woman,
I
told the woman who owned the B&B about it. And later on, I told the woman who was my client traveling with me. Her husband fell asleep, and I could tell her. But I always thought about that. I always thought, who am I to say who's right or wrong about what they believe, what they don't believe? To me, any journey of the divine is fine. Even agnostics and atheists, it's all fine. It's not up to me. I'm not the one to choose where people learn.
We have this conversation a lot, Christy, among the chaplains, because our usual philosophy is pretty much affirm whatever belief people have, and really, like you're saying, love them for what they've got. Yeah. There's a few that we struggle with, and one of the ones you mentioned was that you're all sinners in the eyes of God, and finding ones that we like to elitely say in our sort of snobbery, say, I think that's mentally unhealthy, or I think you're being angry, or I think you're flawed in your understanding of God. And every time we get onto that little box, same idea that you're saying there is there's a very humbling, swift stick that just knocks your knees out from under you every time you try and say, well, I know the right way to find God. And you just get knocked down every time you try that. That we actually have really talked about that professionally, of like, can we even say there's anything that's mentally unhealthy enough that we would say, I don't think you really want to hold on to that way of thinking. Do you think there's any one that would make you want to say, I have to confront this idea of God? Or is that experience with the creek now humbled you to the point where you're going to see it in everything?
Well, it goes back to that curiosity, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
It goes back to saying, if I think this person's wrong about their journey to the divine, what am I afraid of?
Yeah.
And if I can go to that expansion, that's why I got thrown in the stream. That
Mhm.
stream led to the sea, led to the river, which led to the sea, which led to, oh my goodness. So I can see that. And, also, let's go back to this principle too, which I haven't mentioned yet, but maybe have mentioned. I really do believe that we are all, and everybody here believes this, I'm sure, all spiritual beings having a human experience,
Yeah.
including the guy downstairs at the B&B.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason I went looking for him. I thought, oh my goodness, when I couldn't find him, I thought, oh, he was a spirit. So I think that, or maybe wasn't, but he was certainly having the human experience. And why do I have to judge that? Why can't I be fascinated by it? But Tim, I judge it all the time. I'm
So
a
do
Democrat.
I.
2020 drove me crazy, So
Well, and Christy, I'm trying to put that the B&B guy together with the UMC theology, because they're very different in character. You know what I'm saying? Like, you had the one gentleman who was being really abhorrent and really difficult to love in his beliefs about judging others, and you found a hard time not judging him back. But in that congregation where you just didn't feel like this doesn't fit, that's very different. And it wasn't so much like you had to jump up and tell everybody in that church they're all wrong, but you also didn't feel like you belonged.
I could feel there was a tightness around me,
Yeah.
and that I was sort of had a rope around me being pulled outside.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I really have a deep love of the earth, and I felt that maybe Spirit had put me there to feel like I was in the birth canal again. That
Mm-hmm.
that same cervical tightness. And I remember thinking, I squished my face together, thinking about it. I felt so tight in that space because not because they were wrong. Whatever they believed is right. Those people that I took that day are fine people. I love them, and they deeply love God.
Yeah.
I guess it's up to them. One of them's crossed over now, but I just felt for me, I was just needing to get out of that tight suit
Uh-huh.
and have more freedom. It was right on the sea, so I of course left and went right to the sea, and there I felt I was really at peace and in the presence of God. I was in the presence of God in that church too. Just felt better outside.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's like a drive-through window, You
so,
drive through.
I like that.
sorry. So, I just want to help us be mindful of the time and our desire to open it up to the listeners here. Before we do, I just want to say that one of the most endearing qualities of Christy, and one that I think, as Tim pointed out, we are so striving to emulate in our lives, is just that humility of, maybe being blessed with having insight about some things, and also just realizing that, I guess in a sense, the glass is half empty in terms of what we still need to still learn, and the wisdom that is being offered to us still, no matter where we are in our journey. So thank you for that discussion, Tim and Christy. So in our remaining 10 minutes or so, I'd like to invite listeners to unmute and chime in with any, or put into the chat any questions or comments or observations, whatever you like.
Yeah, I would like to talk. My name is Elizabeth Alder, and I just am so grateful for Christy Gray in my life. When I first moved to Athens 30-something years ago, she gave me a reading, and I gave her a reading, and she took me under her wing. And I don't think there was a certain period of my life in Athens that I would have survived without her. And I'm so blessed and so grateful. And the best choice that I've ever made, one of the best choices I've ever made, was to go on the tour of England and Wales and with her to the sacred spaces, and she's just a life enriching person. Thank you for having her on. It's just so wonderful. And just to talk about a little bit, the life and death experience I have had, Raymond Moody did the introduction to my book. And yeah, he's really awesome. So I would be interested if you'll talk a little bit later about, you said that Tim does meditation or something every week. Is that right? Online
We
on
have
Zoom?
a meditation the first 4 Mondays of the month, so not on the
Okay.
first Monday if there is, and the first and third Monday is on healing.
Okay.
And Faith and I, Faith Grieger and I alternate that, and then the second and fourth Monday is about earth healing. Become an earth healer. So
Great.
you just dial into this Zoom channel for
Yep.
Mondays at 6:30, but not the fifth Monday, if there is one, and join us. This is being offered by the Foundation for Family and Community Healing.
Okay, I'll find out how to get onto that.
Well,
Thank you.
well, I was going to just say, if you want to put your email into the chat, I'll just add you to our mailing list. You can see our entire lineup of offerings, free offerings, and we'd very much love to have you as a regular part of our community.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Anyone else? Unmute and chime in. We have a few minutes left.
Melina, how do we support this community? I have really enjoyed this.
Oh, good.
Of course, Christy Gray is one of my favorite human beings.
She is. It shows what extraordinarily good taste we have and good judgment, right? Inviting her. Yes, if you would put your email address into the chat, we will add you to our mailing list. You can come see our website, www.familyandcommunityhealing.org. We're launching our educational platform on relationship education. So learning to be in right relationship, loving yourself, each other, earth, and the divine, the loving force that unites us. So we're all about this relationship. To me, it's all about love. I think Christy spoke to it very well, and she talked especially about loving ourselves. And I was just dying to say, well, how does loving yourself and that lesson, what does that have to do with us loving each other and loving Earth? And and I think the answer is we're all connected. Loving yourself is loving everybody and everything. But I don't mean to put words in Christy's mouth. But thank you. We would love to have you join our community. We think we fill a very unique niche for what's being offered out there, because often these types of topics fall between the cracks. Thank you.
Oh yes, thank you.
I did think you're right, Susanna. If you think about it, a person who loves themselves, they're not going to hurt somebody else.
Yeah.
They're just coming from a really centered, loving place. And I think about the Dalai Lama. One time somebody said to him, "What does not loving yourself mean, or self-hatred mean?" He couldn't understand it. He just couldn't understand it. Finally cried when he understood, when finally somebody explained to him what it was. He sobbed to think that could be the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about that in some of your examples you gave, Christy, of the guy in the B&B and George Bush. And I've heard Dalai Lama say this, that it's often nice to have somebody that you judge really, really harshly, even someone that you think you hate, because that makes really good spiritual practice. It's like going to the gym and picking up the big weights, like learning to love them is a really good practice.
Yeah, if you can love them.
Yeah, love the ones you think you hate the most.
And that's right, yeah. Have compassion for them.
Mm-hmm.
Also respect for that soul's courage to come back and be them, but to be you.
Yeah, because it's you. You said it. If you can't, then it's something you're not looking at in you that you're afraid of.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions from listeners? Unmute and chime in.
Okay, I have a question. It took me a second. Hey, Christy, it's Ginger. Hi,
Ginger.
I love this. Thanks so much for having this. And I echo what everyone said. I adore Christy, and she's my primary teacher. And so I have sort of a heavy question, but it's been coming up a lot today, which is that whole idea of suicide. Any wisdom around that?
Well, I think sometimes that people come back in and they cannot, before we come back in, I just have this allegory that goes on, that we are given a glass of forget. Because if we all remembered how beautiful it was on the other side, we wouldn't stay a moment.
Yeah, you had that problem when you came back, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was curious though. And so I think that some people, because they cannot feel that love in this world that's as beautiful as the world as it is on the other side, they just have a really hard time staying. And if we saw somebody suffering with cancer, physically suffering terribly, we would want to help them leave the world. And when they're gone, we would be relieved at their suffering, that they're not suffering anymore. But we don't see that with people who are mentally suffering or emotionally suffering in the world, the non-physical. And so suicide is very hard to accept. We feel like there's a loss and betrayal, just all these things around it that people feel. But I almost feel like that sometimes people just have to get out of here. I have a friend who committed suicide, and I dreamed that she was in an art museum, and there was a huge, expensive painting in front of her, and she was so desperate to get out of here, she ripped through the painting, and there was a door behind the painting, and she left by that door. And I never regretted that she did that. I always thought I understood that she could not bear this world anymore. It's a hard world to live in if you don't drink all the juice of forgetting. If you drink it all, you lick out the inside and you stay here forever, if you could. But I think that there is sometimes, I never blame anybody, or I haven't in my lifetime blamed anybody for killing themselves, for leaving by suicide. I feel like sometimes it's a way out of suffering. Sometimes not. But then I also believe that when we go, we've learned everything we're supposed to learn. That's the aborted fetus. That's the 95-year-old man. That's the 16-year-old who decides to leave. I'm not going to judge him. I don't know what the story is.
Christy, I think you've said it a couple times already today here that if we're here for a purpose and we're trying to figure out if we've fulfilled that, it kind of logically goes with if you can draw a breath and you're still here, it means you still have something to do. And I'm thinking clinically of all the experiences I've had of people who tried to commit suicide and couldn't.
Right. I'd like to say something about that, if it's okay. I like what Christy said a little bit ago, that when we're ready, when we're supposed to leave, that's when we leave. And a great teacher of mine said that she knew a person who tried to commit suicide, tried to hang himself and the rope broke, and tried to shoot himself and the gun would not go off. And he realized that it wasn't his time. And so the gun had gone off or the rope had not broken, then it would have been his time. And perhaps the suicide would have been a lesson for the people that he left behind.
I was thinking.
And it was just it's time for that person to go. I believe so much in astrology, and when your chart kind of says you're kind of going to exit here, that you will. But I don't know if any astrologer that would say that. But I totally believe we come in with my brother, who's a Vedic knowledge teacher. We come in with like a suitcase full of our karma. And when we unpack that karma, we do it, and when we're done with it, then we can go.
Mhm.
I said, well, to my brother, I said, well, Mark, I came in with like 2 semi trucks full of that. So, but that's, we're here to do what we're here to do and learn what we're here to learn. And then we can go whichever way it is that we leave. So that's mine. But that's when Christy said, it's time to go, then we go. Yeah.
But I think also is I can only say to all of you, and you know this about me, all of you that know me, is that this is what I've learned so far. I'm really open to another idea.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is not Holy Writ. It is not. I'm learning through a glass darkly, and I just know that love is the oil that greases a lot of the machinery, and gratitude is a beautiful expression of that love.
And
I think that's a good way. I think, Christy, that so much of this series is about trying to find how we discern which parts are true and which parts are just us looking through the glass darkly. And so much of what you shared with us today rings so true that I think everybody here is nodding their head over and over again. And we recognize that truth, even if we don't know how to find it all the time. And a lot of what you shared with us here today has been truly wonderful. I love wrapping it up at the end that love is the juice that makes all that happen. So
Thank you.
I'll just start and say thank you very much, Christy, for joining us for this. And I really am deeply grateful to you for all the love and the humility and the humor that you brought to this discussion. It's been a joy to meet you this way. And I really appreciate
you too. I've
Yes.
loved meeting you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that was a perfect way to wrap it up. And I echo Tim's sentiments completely. And I want to just thank everyone again, whether you have loved Christy a long time or you just falling in love with her today. Thank you for joining us and your enthusiasm and the great energy you're bringing to our community. And hope to see you on future events. So again, put your email in the chat if you're not already on our list, and we will start sending you programming information. And I hope you'll come check out our website. Thank you again, dearest Christy, for your beautiful self.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
all.
Thank you.